Hello and welcome for my review of the latest One Piece chapter 1040. And due to me having been sick and busy and not having put out that many videos, I was kind of lazy. I didn't put out a review of the chapters 1039 and 1038. Due to that, though a bit late, I will also quickly go over those three chapters, 1038, 1039, and 1040, and focus my review on the fight of Kid and Law versus BigMom, which is pretty much the main dish of these three chapters, the main course, the steak that we readers were served. But there were also a few interesting side dishes, so to say, for us readers, that are very interesting to go over. So, let's get into it. So, for chapter 1038, the chapter opens up with the two ninja still fighting, still being in a stall. A fight of endurance, who can stand the flames longer. Something that we will see being continued throughout the next chapters. But never going into detail really, as it's just those two pretty much binding each other. And I will address the meaning of this battle later on. We have a short moment of Jinbei catching some rubble and helping others of the rebellion, the samurai rebellion. A scene with Chopper readdressing the side effects of the medicine that Zoro got. And this is the first scene that is of more and bigger importance to us, the readers, I think, which directly connects to Chopper readdressing the side effects, and that is Zoro seemingly in delirium, as it's not clear as it's something that he fantasizes about or that's real, sees a Grim Reaper, and he addresses it. "Who the hell are you? What's happening to my body? It won't move. Stop, get away from me." And we get a bit of a close-up of the Grim Reaper, and it has a bony, scully face. And fans suspected this Grim Reaper to be actually just Brook, and Zoro in his hallucination mistaking his friend, his nakama, for the Grim Reaper, about to take his life. But in the following chapters, we are to find out more about that. We see Frankie being on the look for Zoro, and the scene switches over to CP0 being confronted by Izo, whom CP0 chooses to not engage with as their priority, reconfirmed in this chapter, is Nico Robin. But Izo does not let them pass. We have a short scene with Yamato confronting the yokai, the fire spirit, showing the usefulness of her ability in that particular situation, freezing the bombs in the armory and fighting the yokai with her ice ability. And towards the second half of the chapter 1038, this is where the scene transitions to the most important part, the stake, the fight of Law and Kid versus BigMom. It opens up with Law and Kid being on the ground, seemingly having been defeated by BigMom, and as a reminder, predating this chapter, They have been in quite a prolonged fight with Big Mom, and prior to that, Big Mom had been in a fight alongside Kaido versus the five characters Luffy, Zoro, Kid, Law, and Killer. So all of these characters are probably tired to some degree, more or less, at this point. And just as Big Mom is about to leave, Law injects his rune through his sword directly into Big Mom, which he calls anesthesia, followed by an attack called Shockwelle, which translated means shockwave, which based on the name and the visuals we get and later explanations by Big Mom seems to send shock waves from the inside throughout her body, bypassing her thick armor, which we can probably assume to be armament haki, making it possible to injure that monster Big Mom, a character, a Yonko, that, as we've seen in the past, is hard to injure, hard to damage. This attack gets quickly followed up by a construction of Kid through his Devil Fruit ability, which he calls Punk Cornadio. And the chapter ends with Kid declaring, "I don't care if it kills me, you're not reaching the roof." And this is where the next chapter, chapter 1039, pretty much continues. Aside from a short scene of Momo pulling the island Onigashima a bit away from the capital, the chapter continues with the fight, making it clear that Kid's attack, his bull consisting of metal parts that rammed Big Mom, seemed to have had an effect on Big Mom. To me, raising the implication that once Big Mom got injured through Law's attack from the inside, she was no longer able to keep up that defense, probably armament haki, and protect herself against an outside attack. Kid's metal bull ramming her, which in consequence actually did cause her some injury when it normally would have not done so. So far that it broke her arm, which is quite a severe injury for an emperor, a Yonko. And she makes quite the interesting use of her ability to grant souls to objects. In the past, only inanimate objects, but in this case, she's using her own lifespan to use life and apply it to her own bones to regenerate, to revitalize them, showing the versatility of her ability. Probably one of the most versatile abilities we've seen in the series so far. Following up with a combination of her three homies, creating a saber called Mazer or Macer Saber that she uses to cut Kid's bull in half, but to no avail, which Kid comments, "Nothing but useless scrap." And I think Kid's abilities need to be addressed a bit further, as Kid's strength seems to lie in his ability being to conjure up things, attacks, and constructs that even though he might not be able to infuse them with any kind of haki, at least at this point, are extremely durable and on the other side seem to cost him very little effort to build and to rebuild. So Kit's strength might lie in a battle of endurance. As we've seen, cutting and taking down his constructs does do little to him. But Kit showed us that he is strong and he can use his ability in a versatile way too, confronting Big Mom straight up and using his ability to assign a negative and a positive N and S, referencing North and South in correspondence to his magnetic devil fruit ability, making Big Mom a magnet and the wall behind her a magnet, attaching them together, trapping her to the wall behind her and trying to get her rammed by the bull one more time, which Big Mom averts by mustering up her strength and turning her back with the wall still attached. And I want to say at this point that I really enjoy the choreography, the way the battle is paced, and this back and forth of abilities between those two sides, Big Mom and on the other side, Kid and Law. And we see Big Mom fuse her three homies, I assume all of them, into a giant spectral woman, an ability she calls Misery, again showing the interesting side and the versatility of her devil fruit. About to attack Kit, only to be interrupted by Law summoning up a huge piece of junk above her head. And we've seen in previous chapters that just dropping heavy things on Big Mom normally would have not impressed her much, but we can assume that at this point in the story, through the prolonged fighting, Big Mom probably is worn out too, and even attacks like this seem to show some effect, at least to the point of getting her down to the floor. Law follows up with an attack, having again injected his room into his blade, which he then slams into the chest of Big Mom, expanding the blade further and further throughout Onigashima, all the way down to the ground of Wano Kuni, making even Yamato in the armory, floors further down, react to the attack, and sending a giant shockwave through her body all the way into the ground, creating a giant explosion which leaves a hole throughout the island, the floating island, Onigashima, and a giant crater in the ground of Wano Kuni. And from the blood that Big Mom spills from her mouth, we can assume that this was a devastating attack. Probably the most devastating attack that Big Mom had to take at any point of the manga, at any point that we readers know as of yet. But not enough, this attack gets followed up by Kit's final trump card. Him using his magnetic ability to conjure up something like an electromagnetic gun. And it's not really clear what he's firing, if he's firing some kind of projectile, like a railgun that gets just accelerated through his electromagnetic ability, or if it's a beam of energy more similar to Frankie's beam. And some people might think that this seems underwhelming compared to Law's ability, which actually is true. But we just gotta remember Law's abilities, if he can actually make them to connect, are probably some of the most overpowered abilities in the One Piece world. But at the same time, it's just hard to scale through the visuals alone. Should we assume that Kit's strongest attack is on a similar level to Frankie's radical beam? Even that might not be too bad, as we have never seen Frankie's radical beam have a direct hit on BigMom. So it's not to say that other characters, even though they lack in overall strength, might have specific attacks that might be on a level similar to Emperors of the Sea, on the level of Yonko. A good comparison here might be Elizabellos II's King Punch, which was stated to be on Emperor level. Something we haven't gotten much elaboration on yet. So it seems Eiichiro Oda likes to put in sometimes characters or attacks that in a single specific aspect might be on a way higher level than what we would normally assume from a character. So Kit's strongest attack, seemingly not being on the same level as Law's attack, I think does not take away from him as a strong character and from his efforts in taking down BigMom. Chapter 1039, ending with BigMom receiving the shot of Kit's attack. Chapter 1040 opens up with exactly that moment. And it seems like Kid is able to at least keep up the shot, keep up the beam, or shoot several times in succession. Whether it is seems not too clear to me. But either way, the attack is strong enough to pin BigMom down to the ground. But we see BigMom mustering up her strength to try to scare the surrounding people into giving up their life force with her trick or treat like choice. In this case, her options she offers are life or slave. And we see her still having enough energy to release black lightning, the indication in the manga for Haki, for Emperor's Haki. But with Kid stating, using the last gasps of an old windbag scare me, the souls she's trying to rip from the surrounding people, the father of Kaido's crew and Kid's and Law's crew, seem not to come out finally, indicating that either through lack of strength or her situation that she's in, she seems to not be intimidating enough, even as an emperor, to make use of her ability. And we see another very smart use of Law's ability, copying Corazon's ability, Corazon's devil fruit ability of silencing through his ability. Silencing BigMom and all the sounds inside a room around her. Pretty much emulating a whole nother devil fruit. Which further shows how overpowered Law's devil fruit, the Ope Ope no Mi, probably is. And we get a glorious scene, a double spread, of Law cutting down BigMom's conjured spectral being, Misery, in half, and in the background, Kid keeping up the bombardment with his gun, blasting BigMom through the floors, all the way through Onigashima into the bottom floor, into the armory, giving us this nice blend of scenes, of situations, of Kid and Law's fight versus Big Mom and Yamato's fight, or rather her defense of the bombs in the armory. And Big Mom grabbing one of the bombs triggers it and causes a giant explosion, seemingly blasting huge parts of the fire yokai away and causing the ground of Onigashima to get blasted off, leaving Big Mom to drop all the way down to the ground, falling and falling deeper. And a few interesting parts need to be addressed in this scene, I think. Aside from Yamato protecting the other bombs through her ability, the first thing being the fire yokai. So even though it seems like it had suffered through the explosion and shrunk considerably, it seems not to have died, and we can see it leaving and moving up, saying Orochi-sama. So we might see some further importance of the fire yokai and playing a role with Orochi. The second thing that's of interest here is, while Big Mom is reminiscing and thinking about Roger and the validity of his last words, kind of cursing Roger for having left behind these ambiguous words, causing this big pirate age and in consequence lots of younger generations and new pirates emerging and coming after the heads of the current generation of pirates and the emperors, in consequence coming after her head. While we see all of that, we see Zoro being on the ground, still unconscious. And the ground he's lying on breaking apart, causing him to drop down. And the interesting part here is that we see Brooke just in the picture above that, still being together with Nico Robin. So Brooke has not left Nico Robin's side. He is still on Nico Robin's side to protect her from CP0. Which kinda destroys the theory, the assumption that the Grim Reaper Zoro saw was just him hallucinating and him mistaking Brooke. It is not Brooke, it cannot be Brooke. Which still only leaves two possibilities open. And I will address these two possibilities at the end of my review for this chapter. So stay with me, bear with me. While Big Mom is further reminiscing, we also see a short scene of Hiyori, aka Komurasaki, together with Orochi. Another scene that I think needs some further addressing, as I think the conflict with Orochi has not been played enough yet. That will be the second big thing alongside Zoro's situations that I will address at the end of the video. And we see a short conclusion of the fight between the two ninja, with Laizo going out as the winner. And as it has been maybe addressed by other YouTube channels covering One Piece content, this can be mostly taken as a symbolic victory. But I would say this is not just a symbolic victory for Laizo. I think this is symbolic for the retainers. So Laizo, in his fight and his standing out the flames, showing his endurance, his superior endurance to the other ninja, was symbolic for Oden's retainers having inherited Oden's endurance, standing their ground for their lord, for their beliefs, but also for their country. And even through Laizo as a ninja, this is something that was stated to be how a samurai is. And we see Big Mom ending with crashing into the crater, into the hole created previously by Law's attack, ending in a giant explosion. Something that is not clear to me has been caused by just Big Mom falling or another of the bombs dropping along with her. But either way, she states, "Kid Law, I'll never forgive you for this. You better not think this is enough to kill me." And I think most readers don't expect Big Mom to have been offed, to be dead. We will see more of Big Mom, and I think this was an excellent way, excellently written way for Big Mom to not lose face, for Big Mom to still be portrayed as this monster, this undefeatable monster that is on a different level, that the Yonko, the emperors, are on a different, higher level than the other characters, that this is a wall that is just hard to overcome, but still having given a way for Kid and Law together as a team to defeat Big Mom, even if it's just for the moment. And the fight ends with both of them, Kid and Law, being exhausted seemingly on the ground, and their teammates celebrating that they finally defeated Big Mom. And the chapter ends with Momonosuke initiating a conversation with Yamato through the hole opened up by the explosion of the bomb triggered by Big Mom. Momonosuke reminding us that the giant elephant that is housing the home of the minks, Zunisha, is approaching. And Yamato, through having read Oden's journal, seems to know what Momonosuke is talking about, answering, "You mean the elephant Oden mentioned in his journal." And Momonosuke answers, "Exactly. It committed a serious crime 800 years ago, back when it was Joy Boy's companion." Raising the question if Momonosuke has gotten that knowledge through quickly reading his father's journal, if his father got that much information, or if Momonosuke through some way came to these informations himself, possibly having been told so by the elephant, by Zunisha itself. And many fans are still speculating what is the true nature of Zunisha. Some having raised the theory, and I don't know where it comes from or who was the first, that Zunisha might be Pluton, the ancient hidden weapon that Crocodile, the former Shichibukai, one of the 7 warlords, was searching for. A weapon that is suspected to be a warship that might have eaten a devil fruit, possibly a mythical devil fruit, possibly, in this case, likely a mythical elephant devil fruit. Whether that's true, I think we will see confirmed in probably just a few chapters. I think that revelation will not wait too long. Here's my prediction for the next chapter, chapter 1041. So, for the next chapter, I predict that we will not get an update on Zoro. I think Oda is leaving us a little bit in the dark, keeping it as a kind of cliffhanger to create some tension by leaving the readers, the fans, in the dark about Zoro's future, whether he might die. We might get to see a short update on CP0, as that would be interesting, as that seems to be a parallel plot that has been building up more and more, and that will probably reconnect to Annie's lobby, and I think is of utmost importance. But we will probably not see a conclusion to that. Maybe we will see them in a fight with Izo, maybe we will see them standing above Izo, him having been defeated. Maybe them confronting Brooke and Robin. But we will most likely just get a snippet of that, as that is another thing, another plot that Oda will probably keep going on in the background while the main fights, the main story keeps moving forward. Something that I would wish to happen for the next chapter is continuing Momonosuke's discussion, Momonosuke's explanation of Zunisha, as it seems that Momonosuke at this point seems to be the one that knows the most, for whatever reason. And finally, I predict a transition to the fight of Luffy versus Kaido, as that is still the big chunk, the big final piece of this arc that we want to see. We want to see Luffy beating Kaido and the conclusion to that battle. I think even through we will see the fight picking up where the fight left, seeing the fight continued with Kaido. We will probably not see a defeat of Kaido in the next chapter. I predict that we see no defeat of Kaido in chapter 1041 yet. We might see a defeat of Kaido, or a partial defeat, possibly a draw. Earliest chapter 1042. So now to the two things that I said I wanted to address a bit further. Number one being the situation with Zoro, and number two being the situation with Orochi. So, with Zoro. I said there might be two interpretations. Interpretation number one for the situation of Zoro. It is purely symbolic and might not have that much further meaning for the rest of the story. It's just to show the reader how much Zoro has struggled and how close he's come to dying in this fight, and that he pretty much overcame death. Or option number two, there will be a consequence to pay for Zoro. I doubt that he's actually gonna die, but he might have to fight some lingering consequence. He might have to pay some kind of tribute for having gone way past his limit. And for me, this ties kinda in with one of my previous series, that we might see Zoro taking a completely different course after Wano Kuni, that his character development, especially in hindsight of him having recognized his ambitions as a king, so to say, having unlocked his supreme king, his emperor hierarchy, he might go on an unexpected path following the events of Wano Kuni, following the events of this arc, or if we look at it in a grander scheme, this saga. The second thing I think is necessary to address is the situation with Orochi. And it seems like Orochi is the more minor, the obviously weaker opponent. He's a scummy, disgusting person. He is behind all of the conflicts and misery in Wano currently, having tricked Oden's father, having seized the power and become the shogun, having made himself the leader of Wano Kuni and invited Kaido into his country. But he does not seem to be a strong, imposing person. He was easily chopped down multiple times, which didn't result in him dying, but he seems to be quite a pushover. But I predict that there's more to his devil fruit ability and his devil fruit being called a mythical devil fruit than just being able to survive decapitation, his head being chopped off multiple times. And here's a big theory, I think a pretty big one, that we'll probably see come true or not very quickly, so I had to get it out. And I will elaborate on that one a lot more in depth in a following video. And that is that the final obstacle of this arc of Wano Kuni will be neither one of the emperors, BigMom or Kaido. It won't be CP0, the world government, or Blackbeard popping out of nowhere. It will be Orochi. And for those who are confused and think, no, he doesn't seem that strong, I think the answer might lie in his devil fruit potentially housing exceptional power, and second, in Japanese folklore stories. And in the video to come, I will go over Japanese folklore a bit more with you and elaborate on stories like Momotaro, whose character and name Momonosuke is based on, who goes on a travel to Onigashima or Onigashima, and the story of Susanoo, a god, a kami, who was expelled from heaven, who is one of the 3 children of the founding gods in Japanese mythology. And that god, Susanoo, walking on earth, then confronted the mythological being, the 8-headed serpent, Orochi no Yamato, slayed that serpent, and saved a young woman who was about to be sacrificed to that serpent. And Susanoo found a sword, a special sword in the middle, in the body of the slain serpent of Orochi. And it will be interesting to see how much and in what way Oda chooses to blend these stories and implement them into the world of One Piece. This raises the big question, who fits the role of Susanoo the most. And I could think of a few candidates for that. I'll leave you up to imagination. I'll elaborate more on that in my following video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed my video. Next, more to that topic in the following video. Tune in. See you. Goodbye.